a historic media shift, Hockey Night in Canada
A defining cornerstone of public broadcasting on the CBC, by the way.
is moving entirely behind a corporate paywall on Rogers Sportsnet.
Now, this transition marks the end of decades of free, universally accessible national sports culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, we grew up with it, Eddie.
Yes,
Saturday night,
I mean, we're talking
NHL
about
hockey.
73, 74 years of active coverage by the CBC for the citizens of Canada, and Gary was a staple on your Saturday nights. It was a staple
Yeah.
on my Saturday nights, the regulars. So I am so saddened and so disillusioned by the corporate take-ups of a lot of these national programs that you and I had been paying taxes to for years and years and years, just poof, gone, just like that.
Well, the whole thing is it's following through the professional sports world. As far as I'm concerned, it's all about the money. It's not about the product. It's all about the money. And Rogers 10 years ago struck the deal with the NHL, but the CBC was allowed to stay on for the 10-year period and continue carrying the Saturday night games, and then the all playoff rounds. But the contract ended. And at the time, there was a bidding war back then. There was a bidding war between Rogers and CBC. But the CBC is a public broadcaster, and they don't and should not have the money to jump into that professional pool of greed.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah. We still got our Saturday night hockey and on cable or on over-the-air TV, but most people have had cable by the 70s, 80s, and so we still had access to it. But now the deal's over with the CBC. And it's moving to Sportsnet exclusively. And I understand that Sportsnet just raised its prices.
Yes, they did.
And I think it was a fairly substantial amount. But that comes back around to these professional sports leagues have recognized that they have a pot of gold, the television rights, huge money generator for the league, and everything revolves around the television deals, and right down to the breaks through the period, the 2-minute breaks for the 2-minute commercial islands, which just stops the game dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. I think personally that some of these leagues are getting to a point where it's becoming a turnoff. First of all, given the economic situation that we're in now, a lot of people can't afford the price of the tickets and the price of the food at the arenas, which we touched upon last week. And it's getting to a point now for a lot of Canadians, they're revisiting their cable packages and their streaming packages, because every time you turn around, streaming, which was supposed to make it much easier and be cheaper than cable, and it was,
An alternate to cable, yeah.
Yeah, has now surpassed. You can probably buy a cable package cheaper than what you can for what you're paying for streaming. So a lot of Canadians are looking at that, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of people who are going to drop the Sportsnet package because they're tightening their belts, so they lose access to their hockey games.
Yeah, that's the sad part about all of this. I mean, we were talking about today. We spoke about subsidized housing and on the subject of affordability, I guess. So now all of a sudden you're going to have people that would enjoy the regular hockey broadcast on Saturday nights through the CBC no longer being available to them, which I think at least here in Canada, that's really sad, Gary. I mean, hockey is a staple of our culture for more than a century. I mean, people in the good old days tuned in and gathered around the radio. Foster Hewitt,
Yes.
before he did the first television broadcast, Foster
Yeah.
Hewitt on the radio. People gathered around the radio to listen to Foster Hewitt describe what's going on the ice. And you know, that call that the bygone era, but still, I think even today it's importantly relevant, where Canadians were able to identify around the panel that was presented to us by the CBC every Saturday night, their regional coverage of whatever hockey games were there to be broadcast and talked about, and I'm really saddened to see that particular staple of our culture disappear and fold it into uh, corporate America, if you want to call it. That's exactly what it is. Just the corporate mentality of sports in general. Look, I didn't necessarily agree with everything some of those guys, and there was a couple of clowns on the CBC broadcast crew, but it was still worth a listen, and you got the perspective as presented to Canadians by Canadians, and very often they would relate to, something that's happening in the country that might relate to ice hockey and how ice hockey can actually make your life a little bit better this week because of the fact it's been tough. Here's a hockey game for you to watch, and this is what we think. And there was a lot of good people on that. I just ran by some names. I mean, recent Bob Cole. I mean, him, Dick Irvin,
Mm-hmm.
Danny Gallivan. You're
Yes.
looking at the not Batman and Robin and Don McLean and Don Cherry. I mean, people used to tune in just to see what kind of stupidity would come out of their mouths, and it was the highest viewed 5 minutes throughout the entire country for an entire week just by tuning into Don Cherry and listening to what he had to say, intelligent or not. And then you remember the old Dave Hodge with the light blue Hockey Nights
Yes.
Canada jacket. I mean, it was just so prim and proper, and we were really informed as to what was going on in the hockey world and what was going on in Canada. So it's really just really sad for me to actually see that disappear. And here's the age-old question, Gary. We talked about the CBC moons ago in terms of their budget and whatnot, and the bonuses being handed out to the public broadcaster in CBC. So all of a sudden, CBC won't be giving Rogers Sportsnet any more money for NHL broadcasts, right? Is their
Right.
budget going to be cut? Is
Ah,
my tax dollar and your tax dollar going to get any less?
no,
Is
no,
this
no,
is
no,
the is the
no,
chairman
no,
of CBC going to lose a little bit of her bonus? You know what? Probably not.
no, no. Now, CBC is going to replace the Hockey Night in Canada with sports programming that focuses more on amateur sports.
Right, correct.
Um, and that's fine. But
At 7 o'clock on a Saturday night when hockey's
they're
being
not
played
going to
across the
draw.
country, coast to coast, they're not going to draw
No,
much. Unfortunately, I
no,
think it's a great effort. Great, it's great to show Canadians this. I just think they have it in the wrong time slot, to tell you the truth.
well, first of all, I think somewhere along the way, the CBC has to find its way and stop trying to be all things to all people, or at least
Hmm.
go around promoting that they're trying to be all things to all people to keep that budget up so that they can pay the upper floors of headquarters on Front Street, Toronto. Um, CBC ratings are scarce.
Hmm.
So it's not a loss to the NHL. They'll pick it up for sure. Um, and anyhow, I could go on about the CBC and where they should be going, but I won't. Done that once already, and I'll save it for another day when they make when one of their executives makes some kind of an asinine move. But it's, broadcasters, especially public broadcasters overall, lack the financial capacity to protect or develop or maintain traditional public access. But the CBC is no angel in this, because you have to pay for CBC News Network. Aren't we already paying every year before the end of April through our taxes? You have to pay for they have a number of other areas where it's pay as you view or pay as you listen, pay as you go kind of thing. So they're not.
Gem, for example.
Yeah. So they're not without shame here either when you get down to what they're doing elsewhere. But to lose this tradition, because there are still a lot of communities that don't have access to solid internet service yet, and they do have over-the-air TV and usually just CBC now. And they lose out totally on that tradition, and also being able to watch Canada's game.
Mm-hmm.
So there's small numbers across this great country that have lost access to at least one hockey game a week.
Yeah.
And when you look back, Eddie, every Saturday night in our house, my mother would, just before the hockey game came on, would fry up some burgers and get some fries ready. And then by the time the hockey game came on, that was our Saturday night treat, was, burgers and fries and watching the hockey game. And it was always, in the Maritimes anyway, the game didn't start until 10 o'clock, I think it was. So through the regular season, we only got about half of the game.
Right.
And then during the playoffs, you would get the whole game. So, but those Saturday night traditions, and my brother, staunch Montreal Canadian fan, and me, a staunch Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So there we were in the living room with our father and mother, and watching the hockey game and having our burgers and fries. And when the Leafs and the Canadians were playing each other, like, Wayne and I going back and forth. Yeah. But that's a memory, right?
Well, you mentioned your family, your mom, your dad, and your brother. Brought me back, Gary. My mom coming from Slovenia. My mom learned how to speak English watching CBC.
Wow.
Literally, she loved watching hockey. She loved that sport. I'd be with her. My dad would be reading the newspaper. He couldn't care less what was going on in the television. But my mom watched hockey with me, and my sisters watched hockey with me along with my mom. And over the course of time, she's learned to swear like a hockey player as well. So she did learn English, and she really understood the game of hockey, the nuances of it. I mean, it's amazing to see her when she was in her 80s talking to me about a hockey game. Did you see bleep, 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 bleep? And she knew her hockey, So my memory goes back to that. And how many wonderful memories of Canadians coast to coast will go back to that in their minds and say, I grew up with this, and it's just so sad to see such a tradition just dry up. And let me ask you, Gary, is this something you think the CBC chose not to pursue, or is it something that Rogers Sportsnet outpriced it so much that they wanted to put CBC out of business when it came to NHL coverage, or a little bit of both.
I think that the CPC saw the writing on the wall when they lost
Yeah,
out the first time around, and
12
Rogers
years ago.
got it. Yeah, and they struck the deal. It was a 10-year deal, and they knew that eventually, especially where Rogers was developing Sportsnet, that the writing was on the wall that Rogers would want that product
Yeah,
exclusively for Sportsnet, and they had the money to do it.
yeah.
We're talking big dollars here that Rogers is paying the NHL for another contract, and they paid big dollars 10 or 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, as I say, it's this is now just strictly it's all about the money, and not necessarily about the product. And talking about our Saturday nights watching Hockey Night in Canada growing up, point I came across kind of echoes that. Moving cultural assets to premium cable or streaming networks creates an economic filter around an experience that historically unified the country across socioeconomic lines.
So sad to see that go. I really am. I love CBC sports coverage. Especially during the Olympics. I'm glued to the Olympics watching CBC. They did such a great job, and they did such a great job with the NHL as well. So I guess that's just going to be the epitaph on their gravestone, right? It was great while it lasted.
Yep, that's the way it is. Now, let's do our takeaway.
Okay. Well, gating iconic cultural programming behind private corporate paywalls forces Canadians to pay a premium to access their own national traditions.